The city had forgotten the industrial district, but the slaughterhouse had not. 5 explorers, Leo, Cassie, Max, Rico, and Tara, approached the rusted gates. Their flashlights barely pierced the failing twilight. Chimneys leaned like broken fingers. Windows gaped jagged and black like the eyes of a corpse. Wind whispered through shattered panes, carrying voices that were not quite human. Leo led, trying to mask fear with confidence. "Stay close. Don't make any sudden moves." Rico shivered. I don't know if this is a good idea." Cassie forced a laugh. "It's perfect. Think of the shots we'll get. Abandoned building, creepy vibes. What could go wrong?" The air smelled metallic and old, the coppery tang of blood lingering decades after the last butcher had vanished. Their boots crunched broken tiles, some slick with blackened, congealed blood. Hooks swayed from the ceiling, glinting in their lights. Pools of sticky fluid reflected the beams in warped, eye-like shapes. They entered the main hall. Max pointed at a wall. "Those scratches, too deep to be rats." Cassie shrugged. "Probably workers messing around years ago." But something moved in the shadows, something fast. A metallic scraping echoed through the hall. The explorers froze. One of the hooks above twisted unnaturally, swinging closer as if sensing their fear. The group pressed forward, but each step made the building groan and shift. Shadows stretched. Whispers, barely audible at first, grew louder. Each whisper repeated their names, their sins, their fears. Rico tripped over something slimy. Black liquid coated his shoes. "Oh God, what is—" He never finished. A clawed hand shot from the darkness, dragging him into the black. Screams erupted, tearing through the hall, wet and tearing. The freezer loomed at the end of a narrow corridor, frost-coated and oppressive. Its doors, massive and scarred, had hinges that groaned under the weight of decades. Leo pushed it open. Cold hit like knives. Inside hung a carcass, half cow, half human, skin ripped, muscles glistening. Blood dripped slowly onto the floor. Its eyes opened, pale and intelligent, staring directly at them. Cassie whispered, voice trembling, "It's alive." A metallic scraping echoed. Knives on the wall slid along their racks, deliberate. A wet, guttural growl hissed, "Leave, while you can." They turned to flee, but the freezer door had vanished, replaced by frost-coated steel. Panic erupted. Leo stumbled backward, memories flashing. Childhood hunting trips, the deer's eyes, the feel of blood on his hands. The hanging carcass twisted these memories into a living nightmare. Screams echoed, impossible to place. Part animal, part human. Cassie saw a vat of black liquid in the corner. Pale limbs twitched inside. Faces appeared, distorted, familiar, reaching toward her. Leo's younger brother, lost years ago. She blinked, and it vanished. But the limbs still reached. Max wandered a twisting corridor. Hooks swung unexpectedly, slicing air. A carcass lunged. He dodged just in time, landing in a pool of thick, viscous fluid. It pulled at him, sticky and alive. Rico's screams faded into wet, tearing sounds. Cassie collapsed as a clawed hand raked her thigh. Blood pooled, thick and black, mixing with the cold, viscous fluid on the floor. Leo swung a cleaver at a convulsing creature, half human, half animal. Its screech was unbearable, echoing in impossible layers. The freezer carcass twitched behind it, limbs bending and curling in impossible ways, its pale eyes locked on Leo. Memories of hunting trips flashed in his mind again. Deer, blood, eyes that had stared at him with awareness. Now that memory was alive, fused with the present. Every swing, every step, felt like he was inside a nightmare stitched together from his own sins. Cassie tried crawling through the hall, bleeding heavily from her leg. Each movement drew her deeper into pools of viscous black fluid. Pale, clawed hands emerged from the sludge, grasping at her. Faces, twisted, familiar, impossible, appeared within the fluid. Mouths opening and closing, screaming silently. Her mind fractured. She remembered childhood nightmares, her mother's screams, her own failures. Every hallucination merged with reality. The walls shifted, hooks swung, corpses lunged. She tasted iron on her tongue, slick and metallic. Every breath was a struggle. Every heartbeat felt like the slaughterhouse pulsed in rhythm with her terror. A clawed hand shot out, catching her by the hair. She screamed, eyes wide, blood streaming from her leg and scalp. The walls closed in. The building was alive, and it was hungry. Max stumbled through a twisting hallway. Hooks swung from above, cleavers leapt from racks. The walls seemed to breathe. Black fluid crawled across the floor, alive, sticky, reaching. A hanging carcass lunged from the side. Max twisted, but one clawed hand raked across his torso, tearing through skin and muscle. Pain exploded. Blood sprayed. He tried to fight, swinging a metal pipe, but the slaughterhouse had anticipated him. Every corridor looped back impossibly, trapping him further. Leo entered a massive chamber, lit dimly by flickering overhead lights. Carcasses hung from every wall and ceiling. Some convulsed violently, limbs bending like marionettes. One swung at him, slicing through his arm, muscle tearing. Blood spattered onto the floor, mixing with black fluid that hissed as it touched the wound. He swung the cleaver, connecting with another carcass. It let out a high-pitched, inhuman scream, and the air seemed to vibrate with 100 unseen voices. The freezer carcass twitched behind it, limbs bending and curling in impossible ways, its pale eyes locked on Leo. Memories of hunting trips flashed in his mind again. Deer, blood, eyes that had stared at him with awareness. Now, that memory was alive, fused with the present. Every swing, every step, felt like he was inside a nightmare stitched together from his own sins. Cassie staggered into a long corridor lined with hooks, each hanging corpse twitching unnaturally. Half human, half animal, stitched together in grotesque parodies of life. They swung lazily, dripping blood onto the cracked floor. She stumbled over a slick puddle, slipping into viscous black fluid that clung to her skin like living oil. Whispers filled the corridor. Her name, her childhood fears. Faces pressed from the walls, screaming silently. A clawed hand shot from one shadow, raking across her shoulder, tearing flesh. Pain exploded. She screamed, tasting iron. From the corner of her eye, a hook twitched unnaturally. One of the hanging carcasses lunged, limbs bending impossibly, eyes glowing pale blue. Cassie barely rolled away, scraping herself against shards of broken tile. Max stumbled through another corridor, trying to locate his friends. The walls seemed to pulse, breathing. Hooks swung without warning. Cleavers leapt from racks. Pools of black liquid shifted like living creatures. He remembered a memory, his first dissection in biology class. The smell of formaldehyde, the organs cold in his gloved hands, perfectly clinical. Now the memory was alive, twisted. The organs on the floor reached for him, twitching, screaming silently. A stitched carcass lunged, its jaw unhinging impossibly, teeth dripping with fresh blood. Max swung a pipe. It connected, slicing through stitched flesh. The thing shrieked, a sound layered with every scream he'd ever heard. The walls shifted, closing him in. Max realized he wasn't just running. He was being hunted by the building itself. Leo staggered into a massive chamber. Hanging carcasses swayed violently, their limbs bending unnaturally. The room smelled of iron, decay, and something older, ancient, predatory. From the shadows, it emerged, the butcher. Its body was a grotesque quilt of stitched flesh, human and animal combined. Limbs twisted at impossible angles, muscles rippling unnaturally as it moved. Pale glowing eyes scanned Leo with intelligence and hunger, its jaw unhinged impossibly, jagged teeth glinting with fresh blood. Behind it, the freezer carcass twitched violently, limbs writhing as if alive. The butcher hissed, wet and guttural, a sound that made bones ache. Hooks swung, cleavers leapt. The air vibrated with the sound of metal scraping metal. The slaughterhouse itself seemed to pulse in rhythm with its movements. Leo's heart raced. Every instinct screamed to run, but the doors had vanished. There was nowhere to hide. He swung his cleaver wildly at a convulsing carcass. It shrieked, a high-pitched sound layered with every scream he had ever heard. Blood sprayed across the walls and ceiling, warm and sticky. The butcher moved silently, impossibly fast, each step precise. Its gaze locked on Leo, a predator observing its prey. Shadows twisted around him, forming grotesque parodies of his memories. Faces of family, childhood friends, distorted and screaming. Blood sprayed across walls and floors. Hooks swung from ceilings, slicing chunks from moving corpses. Every step Leo took was predicted by the building. He could not escape. The butcher lunged, claws raked across Leo's torso, teeth sinking into shoulder and neck. Pain exploded. Blood sprayed across the chamber, mixing with black fluid pooling on the floor. Leo swung the cleaver desperately, hacking at anything that moved. The butcher hissed, wet and guttural, and the walls seemed to pulse, twist, and breathe. The freezer carcass convulsed violently, limbs writhing in impossible directions. Its pale eyes locked onto Leo. Each heartbeat echoed through the building, reverberating in rhythm with its sentience. Leo's mind completely fractured. Hanging carcasses mimicked his movements, shadows lunged from walls, and whispers repeated every guilt, fear, and memory. The floor shifted, stretching, bending, trapping him. Hooks swung at impossible angles. Blood and black fluid rose, swirling around him. Every breath was metallic, every heartbeat a hammering drum of terror. He screamed. The sound was swallowed by the slaughterhouse. Leo tried to flee, but the walls twisted impossibly. The butcher advanced, faster than thought, muscles rippling. Hooks swung, cleavers leapt, and carcasses lunged. Blood sprayed in thick, sticky torrents. Pain erupted as limbs were torn, flesh shredded. Hallucinations overlaid reality. The floor melted, walls closed in, corpses lunged, whispers mocked him. The butcher's claws sank into Leo's chest. He clawed desperately, swinging his cleaver, but it was futile. The building consumed Leo. Flesh, blood, memories, screams. They became part of the slaughterhouse itself. The butcher paused, watching as its prey merged with the sentient building. Hooks swung lazily, cleavers clattered. The walls pulsed, alive. The black, viscous fluid continued to ripple, absorbing every trace of the explorers. Outside, the industrial district appeared abandoned. The city was oblivious. A single stray cat entered the yard, paused at the gates, ears twitching. Metallic scraping echoed. The cat vanished into shadows. No one approached the building. But the slaughterhouse waited, alive, sentient, and ever hungry. It was no longer just a building. Every wall, floor, hook, and hanging carcass was part of its intelligence. Every scream, every drop of blood, every hallucination became part of it. To passers-by, it was abandoned. To anyone who dared enter, it was infinite horror. It remembered, it hungered, it waited. Anyone who entered would join its nightmare. The slaughterhouse had become infinite horror. It would never sleep. The nightmare was eternal.